What's up guys, it's me Zerodomai Kitsune, and before we begin, I know people were expecting the next review to be Fate Extella Link, but I am just faded out right now. I spent the last month hard grinding Fate Grand Order because I wanted this. Or more specifically,
wow!
And I needed to beat 3 chapters of story content plus the event itself to get them. It's over, man. Up, servant. What? Wait! You! Oh, screw this, I'm never playing another Fate game again. Your scheduled Fate review will be arriving in the coming weeks. In the meantime, I want to cover a new series that has recently gotten a big bump, and a game I hope people won't overlook for its shinier, newer, early access big brother, Risk of Rain the Platformer by Hoppo Games, all about treasure hunting, time management, and shooting really big things really fast. So let's get started. So what is Risk of Rain? Well, it's a roguelike action platformer where you're stranded on a planet and you fight monsters while trying to escape. Hey, the game was first made by 2 people. That's not to say there isn't lore, but aside from the game's title sequence, there's nothing but video game. Select your class and out you go. Well, now what? The first thing you will notice is the calm space music playing in the background that accompanies you as you explore. So soothing, so melancholy. The second, you look like a Lego. Yeah, no big titty bitches in this one. The 8-bit graphics animate surprisingly well, giving your character a good sense of life and weight despite their simplicity. This also applies to the enemies. As you progress, you will encounter larger and larger foes, more detailed in comparison, showing just how small your character is in this alien world. On the UI front, I like the minimalistic design the game has going here. Attacks at the bottom, wide open space for platforming, an odd gauge slowly filling up, and your character positioned in the center of the screen, so despite being a Lego, you don't lose track of him. Don't be fooled though, when starting the game for the first time, it does feel a bit slow, the screen does feel a bit empty, and generally speaking, kinda comes across as boring. But, as you progress through the game, you will quickly start to see all that space eaten up by numerous enemies, semi-tricky platforming, and my favorite thing in video games. Okay, second favorite thing, damage numbers. I have a problem. One misconception I noticed while streaming this game, on Twitch TV/Zerodomai Kitsune, come join me, we play fight games, was that some people thought the game only had like 3 stages, because I was dying so often. And I'm going to put that to bed right now. The game actually has 11 stages and you progress through 5 of them in any given playthrough. All these stages and locations come together to feel very alien, especially when you read some of the lore connected to the enemies that populate this hostile environment. Like, what's your story? Field notes. I have arrived in an even stranger land. After recovering from my sudden teleportation, I noticed that my suit was flashing warnings about air filtration. All across the landscape were giant fungi, some as tall as trees. When approaching a bulbous mushroom, it suddenly sprouted from the ground, jumping a few feet in the air and then landing on 2 nubby feet. At this point, my air filtration warnings went from yellow to red, and I began to have difficulties breathing. While sentient, these mushrooms were not very intelligent. It had what looked like 3 eyes, but it could not navigate very well, implying that these may be fake eyes to scare predators. It also had no mouth to eat, but would plant itself over corpses, slowly absorbing nutrients through its root-like feet. Something I don't normally emphasize in these reviews, and I probably should do more often, is the sound, and I don't mean the music. No, I mean the sound effects in the game, the thud of a shotgun connecting, the pow of explosives, all the various death chimes of the enemies. it harmoniously goes together, adding to the enjoyment and making attacks and events feel powerful. The visuals of these attacks also line up fairly well, even leaving a corpse of all your enemies behind as you carve your way relentlessly towards victory, only to grasp defeat. I won't call this game gorgeous, but it is still visually appealing to the eyes and ears, particularly once you start throwing items into the mix. The one thing I do think warrants some criticism is simply the game itself.
Boom.
Sorry, I mean how it runs. It's one of those older titles, you know, before devs realized most people have the attention span of a goldfish. So alt-tabbing is a bit finicky, but still works, so it's a minor gripe. But now, let's talk combat. Just as you would expect from an indie title, what this game lacks in deep story or million-dollar graphics, it very much makes up for in gameplay. It is just so simple yet addicting. I can't stop playing it. I play it before I work. I play it before I sleep. I play it when I'm supposed to be playing other games. The goal is simple. Explore each stage to find a teleporter, survive until it's charged, move on to the next stage, rinse, repeat. Not all that special, but here's the catch. That gauge sitting in the corner? Well, that's a timer, tracking just how long your run is taking, and the longer you play, the more it builds, and the more it builds, the stronger and more aggressive the enemies become until... Now on the bright side, your attacks are pretty solid for dealing with the first two ticks. Each survivor has 4 different actions they can perform: a basic attack, an offensive special, a defensive special, and an ultimate. I don't think they are labeled like that, but roll with it. These tools are okay by themselves, but as the game progresses, you will need bigger guns to take down the opposition, and that is where the items come into play. Scavenging items as you explore augments your character, making them tankier, more mobile, and most importantly, more lethal. Want to shoot a barrage of missiles when you attack? There's an item for it. Want to protect yourself with a recharging barrier? There's an item for it. Want to soar through the air and squish your enemies beneath your feet? There's an item for it. I don't recommend it though, because in a cruel twist of fate, even though it is now the Lego doing the stepping, you still take the damage. Starting off, you will have only access to a couple of these tools, with them dropping from chests randomly placed in the world and defeating bosses, but as you play through and inevitably die millions upon millions of horrible deaths, you will unlock more and more things to make each run more interesting than the last, and increase your chance at finally making it to the end. That is one of the game's strongest points, the unlockables, because there is a nice list of achievements in the game, ranging from defeating certain enemies, finding secrets, accomplishing things within a certain time frame, and even, for the game's journalists in us all, just dying a lot. Win or lose, you will always be working towards another achievement, making almost every run feel meaningful. You can unlock other survivors to play with radically different playstyles, like the sniper, who can do shit like this, but struggles with her adoring fans. The engineer, who has other people to do the fighting for him, but lacks mobility, the huntress, more on her in a moment, and the enforcer. Okay, now's a good time to point out, not everything is useful. The balance of items, enemies, and yeah, the survivors can be all over the place. Some items are quite underwhelming, a few bosses are borderline target practice, and the enforcer's kinda crap. As the game progressively gets more difficult, this doesn't just mean bigger health pools. Spawns become more frequent, enemies start getting mutated abilities, bosses become normal enemies, until... and you can't tank that. As things get more difficult, avoiding damage and kiting enemies becomes more and more important, which is why the Huntress gets all the fan art. She is a kiting master, able to attack enemies while moving, hit multiple targets with her special, and even possesses a teleport. Because why not? And what does the enforcer have? He has a shield.
Oh god.
On the bright side, there is a multiplayer mode allowing you to fulfill—
There is no multiplayer.
What do you mean? It's right there.
Do you know how to port forward?
Yes.
Do your friends?
No.
There is no multiplayer.
Even without multiplayer, there are plenty of ways to augment the standard gameplay through the use of artifacts. items hidden in each stage that unlock extra rules for your runs. Glass is, from what I can tell, the community's favorite modifier, causing all your attacks to hit like nukes in exchange for making your character as sturdy as a twig. This negates the health sponge aspect of the game that some people might eventually get tired of, but I think it makes the game a bit too easy in the long run. Yeah, that's a bit much. One benefit of these modifiers though is that some achievements that seem incredibly difficult can be made trivial with artifacts. I mean, survive till the third teleporter without taking any damage may seem like an unsurmountable obstacle when even jumping too high is a potential hazard, but when your character is gonna die in one hit anyways, who cares? Just enjoy that beefy 500% damage increase and go to town. And that's the key to enjoying this game. A lot of seemingly difficult achievements, and maybe even beating the game in the first place, seem incredibly difficult, but knowledge is a game changer. Sometimes the best method to unlocking something is to unlock something else first. Heck, the best method to even beating the game is not even hinted at by the game and is actually a bit counterintuitive. Exploring the map and collecting items is secondary. Your primary goal is to hunt down that teleporter and activate it ASAP. Do your farming and exploring while waiting for the teleporter to charge, because otherwise... A fun thing to do when the game is starting to wear out its welcome is to use the command artifact, removing the RNG element of items altogether, allowing you to select what items you want to spawn from a chest, making most runs an absolute breeze. One might wonder why I'm reviewing a game that not only has a fancy new sequel out in early access, but also was released so far back that it had multiplayer via port forwarding. Well, simply put, I saw the sequel and felt very mixed due to it being a third-person shooter instead of a platformer. Is that a bad thing? No, not necessarily, and don't be surprised if you see a Risk of Rain 2 video sometime in the future, but what that does mean is that Risk of Rain, the original, can give people something different from its successor in ways that other games with sequels in the same genre can't. With that said, it is an older game, and alt-tab and multiplayer issues aside, while my time with it was rather spotless, I have read reports of certain items causing memory leaks and crashing issues if you go for some crazy long runs. For the average person though, I think this game has quite the charm to it and can lead to hours of fun. So my final rating for Risk of Rain, with the price of $9.99, is a solid steal. If you like platformers, loot hunting, roguelites, or even just something to eat some time with, Risk of Rain will be perfect for the occasion, and hopefully Risk of Rain 2, preferably once it comes out of early access, will do the same. But with that, I'll see you guys next time. Matane!